Hey guys, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Today I wanted to bring you guys my Ganyu review, and this might seem a little late to some people, but I really just wanted to get a good idea of what Ganyu is capable of from a whale perspective and from a free-to-play perspective. And hopefully this video will help you decide if you want to pull for her or not, or if you already have her, then decide if you want to spend your resources on her. Before we get into the comparison, let's just break down the pros and cons of Ganyu, and let's begin with the pros. The first thing I have to say is that she has a really strong kit. She deals a lot of damage with her charge shots, and throughout the duration of her ulti, her E is a 6-second cleanse that aggroes enemies and generates 4 elemental particles and applies cryo twice. Her second pro is that she's very versatile. She can be either a main DPS, a sub DPS, or a support, and none of those are unoptimal options. Another pro that she has is that she has great synergy with some of the best units in the game, such as Venti, Sucrose, Bennett, Diluc, and even Klee. She can easily get you the cryo resistance buff on your team for another 15% crit rate, and she enables melt and perma-freeze comps. She also pairs beautifully with Child. Another huge pro is that she's very easy to build. There's a lot of really good weapons for both pay-to-win and free-to-play players, and in terms of artifacts, she's very easy to build because she gets crit damage from her ascensions, which means you have to rely on crit damage from artifacts a lot less, and there are a bunch of different artifacts that you can run on her. You can run 4-piece Wanderer's Troop, you can run 4-piece Bolide, you can run 4-piece Hydro Set, you can run 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Blizzard if she's a support, you can run 2-piece Blizzard, 2-piece Gladiator. There's a bunch of different options and they're all pretty strong. Another thing that's a pro is that she is ranged, so she can deal with bosses like Dvalin with extreme ease, and she can deal with bugged enemies in Abyss and Domains, which happens quite often. Another thing that's a pro, mainly for free-to-play players, is that she does not need Constellations to be an absolute beast. Constellations make her cracked as a main DPS, but they are not needed whatsoever. And the last pro I have here on my list is that her blooms don't even need to hit enemies, so you can just shoot the ground and do a crapload of damage, which basically makes her require 0 skill to play. She doesn't have any animation cancels or anything like that, and it's a lot easier to play her on mobile when there's less stress on hitting those weak spots every single time. Alright, now let's move on to the cons. The first one, and the main one that most people have with respect to Ganyu, is her playstyle. A lot of people find it boring, and I get it. I mean, you just point and shoot, point and shoot, point and shoot, rinse and repeat. Aiming in Genshin is also pretty garbage, and having to stay away from enemies is annoying when they teleport next to you or jump on top of your ass. Another con is that she is a cryo archer, and I mentioned this as a pro, but in reality it's a double-edged sword, because she cannot deal with cryo enemies at all. Her basic attacks are horrible. She also can't deal with Geo very well, and she cannot deal with shields at all, like physical shields, like the rock wall shields, Metaturals, and the wooden shields. You can freeze them and taunt them, but it's finicky, and it's definitely one of her major downsides. Another downside is that for most free-to-play players, they will end up using the Prototype Crescent or the Black Cliff Warbow. Now don't get me wrong, both of those weapons are really good, but the passive does not work on bosses or slimes in terms of the Prototype Crescent and certain other enemies, and for bosses you can't proc either passives, so it's kind of bad in a couple of important scenarios. Another con for Ganyu is that she has weak elemental reactions. For Melt, she does kind of make up for it because she has insanely high damage, but that doesn't take away the fact that it's 50% weaker than if it was being procced with Pyro. The other reaction you can do is Superconduct, which, let's be honest, Lamau, and then there's Freeze, which is nice, but it doesn't necessarily do damage, so it's not really a booster for your DPS unless you're running her as a support, but even then, Melt would be better. Another thing she struggles with is the fact that she is incredibly squishy. Like in most endgame content, you'll die in 2-3 hits max. She's also kind of meh for exploration. She doesn't bring much to the table. And if you fuck up her charge shot once when you're making an ice bridge, that's it, you're done. Because the platforms do not last long at all. It's incredibly difficult to deal with enemies in close quarter combat because of how she is designed to be played. And I know this is more of a pet peeve, but I hate how long of an animation her ulti has. I can literally run a 60-second ad break on my Twitch stream whenever I press Q. And lastly, the last cons I have to say here is that her potential is locked behind Constellations. Now I know that in my pros I mentioned that she doesn't need them, which is still true, but she comes just such an absolute beast of a character with Constellations, it's not even remotely funny. It's very similar to Child, where he's a very capable carry at Constellation 0, but having Constellations makes him just an absolute rampaging monster, and that's basically the same thing with Ganyu. They don't play or feel like the same character anymore. They're just unlocked. So those are her pros and her cons. Now let's talk about the differences I have noticed while playing on my free-to-play account compared to my main account. The most prominent one is that I have to use Prototype Crescent, which is significantly weaker than the Amos bow. Now, if you got lucky and have an Amos bow on your free-to-play Ganyu account, then all the more to you, but for most people, the damage difference will be very noticeable, especially in boss fights like Dvalin. Her Constellation 1 is also noticeable in these boss fights specifically because they last so long, but for the most part, it's not really that noticeable. And on my free-to-play account, I don't really have amazing artifacts because I don't have, don't spend as much resin farming them, so I don't one-shot enemies all that often, and I do end up relying on reactions or Viridescent Shred more often than I do on my main account. Because enemies don't die as quickly, I see more value in freeze comps on the free-to-play account because they give me the time window I need to pump in the remainder of my damage that I need to kill them. On my main account, I basically just use her and only swap when I need to deal with a cryo enemy or with a shield, and that's literally it. One last thing I want to mention, guys, is that Ganyu is really unlucky, and some might consider this a con, but basically, the biggest problem that she has is that she came out right before Xiao. I feel like that's the main reason most people are not and will not pull for Ganyu. It's because they want to save up for Xiao. They're going to miss out on this amazing, versatile, and free-to-play friendly unit that won't come back for a long, long time to save up for a character they have never played before, and all the information they know is based off of constantly changing data mines and leaks. And he's an Anemo main DPS. Now I get it, okay? He looks dope, he's edgy, he's cool, he can plunge attack a lot. But if you don't pull Ganyu now, you might regret it in the future. That's all I'm saying. It happened to a lot of people with Child because they were saving up for Zhongli. I just don't want to see a repeat of history, essentially. Well guys, that's it. That's my Ganyu review. Very well deserving of her 5-star status, both aesthetically and power-wise. I honestly believe she's a must-pull unit, and I recommend that you try to get her if you can. But at the end of the day, it's your primos. You do whatever you want, but this is my suggestion. I want to thank all my patrons for their continued support, and a huge shout out to John for becoming a patron once again with his incredibly generous support. I hope I can do you proud, Johnny boy. And most of all, thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys on my stream over at twitch.tv/Yoda_O_soda or in my next video. Take care.